without a mountain to climb, you have this like vacuum of like a hole inside of you that will ultimately pull whatever it wants in if you're not giving it something. You know, it was just replacing all of that old shit with something better for me, something good for me. And
it's something that's exciting
and fun. And I also love being able to reap the benefits of the work that I put in. I love watching myself get healthier, watching myself get stronger, watching myself get faster. Like, I love that whole process.
Welcome to The Shift. I am so thrilled today to have my brother Dane Davis, on the show. Dane and I met about 7 years ago, and we both began our journeys of sobriety around the same time and ended up having the same mentor. And because we had the same mentor, we ended up becoming like brothers almost automatically. It was almost like, in a way, mentor was dad and we were the brothers that were being guided by the same person. And our stories and the things that we struggled with were quite similar. So we started talking on the phone, seeing each other, spending time together, and we became what we often refer to as fellow travelers. It was as if he and I were both hiking up a really, really challenging mountain, and he was right beside me with his bag of equipment, and I was right beside him with my bag of equipment. And if I dropped one of my tools and it fell off the ledge and I lost it, he'd be like, "Here, I got one." And he'd hand it to me. I'm using a whole bunch of metaphors because none of this actually happened, but this was kind of what it was like. We were able to very much assist each other and help each other see our blind spots. He became a major support system for me. I became a major support system for him. We would talk on the phone every single week. I would be really quick to be hard on myself when I wasn't doing things perfectly. And he would remind me, "Ben, give yourself some grace. You're doing so great." And vice versa. He would have moments where he would be hard on himself because he didn't do something exactly the way that he wanted to do it. It wasn't as sober as he maybe thought it could have been. And I would look at him and I would watch his story, and I'd be like, "Brother, are you realizing how much progress you have made in the short period of time that we've known each other?" And so we really became assets in each other's lives, allies to each other. And we were, at the time, it really felt like fighting in a war inside that we needed the help to get through. So when I think about these past 7 years of my life and the shifts that I've had and that I continue to have, I can't even think about these last 7 years without thinking about Dane, without thinking about you and the impact that you've had on my life. And the growth that I've had, not only from what you've given me, but from what you've allowed me to give you. I could keep going because I love you so much, but I'll stop there and we'll get into our conversation. Thank you so much, brother, for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. You know, I feel grateful, and it means a lot to me because it means that I meant something in your shift, in your recovery. And, you know, that's why we do this, you know. Can't keep what we have if we don't give it back.
Right.
So,
but I want to talk about these big shifts that you've experienced in your life. Let's talk a little bit about what you at one point were struggling with that made you feel, "I need to make a change," and what was ultimately that moment that you knew that it needed to happen.
I spent my whole life chasing validation and attention, just wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard. And that usually was in the form of women, right? The ultimate payoff was a beautiful, attractive woman who was interested in me. And I did anything and everything to get that attention. And it didn't only have to be about that. My drinking and partying and wanting to be liked and approved by friends, men as well. It kind of ruled my life. I just wanted to be seen. I wanted to be heard. I remember for, my teens in high school into college, kind of like living this wild life, partying, trying to get as much attention as I can from women, being with, hooking up with as many women as possible and being proud of it, right? Like I remember coming home from my dorm room and seeing my roommates and my friends and like bragging about the stuff. Mm-hmm. If I had to pinpoint the first shift, it was probably around 23, 24 years old, where I stopped being so proud of the behavior, The behavior started...
That's young for that to happen.
Yeah, I think it was a gift. And I say that today, that it was a gift. I had this gift of awareness around that stuff. And a lot of it was because I was hurting people in the process. A lot of it because I was in and out of relationships and really truly wanting the relationships to work, but not being able to make it work on my own part, on my own end. I had a lot of really good women in my past, really good girlfriends in my past, and I just couldn't stay faithful, and that was the reality. And alcohol and drugs was always a part of it. Sometimes it wasn't, but a lot of times it was. And I remember the first shift. I remember that it started to become somewhat of a secret, something I didn't necessarily talk to my friends about anymore. And I was like, oh, that's weird. Just clocking it like, okay, like why don't I want to brag about the girl that I hooked up with last night, Continued stuffing it down though, not really processing it or dealing with it. And then about 26, 27, I was in a relationship with a girl who I hurt big time, over and over. I was continuing to cheat, continuing to lie, and the relationship would come to a head, it would end, and then I would convince myself that I was ready to become the man that she needed me to be. Mm-hmm. So I would beg for her back, and then the day I would get her back, I would regret that decision. Mm-hmm. And what I like to say is that I wasn't lying to her, that I was lying to myself. Mm-hmm. Then about 2018, which I would say is like I was 27, 28 years old, I lost one of my best friends to this disease, addiction. And I spent the next year completely destructive to myself, drinking more than I ever had, getting high more than I ever had, cheating more than I ever had, lying more than I ever had. And I realized that something needed to change, and that's when I got into therapy.
How did you know that something needed to change?
Another example, like I remember I said I used to be proud of it, and then I stopped talking about it. Mm-hmm. Well, now that same behavior started to eat me alive from the inside out, like causing maybe periods of depression or episodes of anger that I had never experienced before, or violence. Mm-hmm. When I drank, I was violent. And it's not something I'm proud of. It was like to be a man back in the day was fucking and fighting, mm-hmm. And if I wasn't getting laid at the bar, I was usually picking a fight with someone, mm-hmm. or not backing down from one. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that I used to kind of brag about, right? When I was younger, getting into fights, winning fights. And then I stopped talking about it. And I felt uncomfortable when other people would bring up my past of fighting and stuff.
I'm fascinated by that shift. How all of a sudden it goes from I'm excited about this conquest of either this sexual experience with this woman or this fight that I got into, and then all of a sudden now the desire to want to share it and brag about it is gone, and now all of a sudden I want to actually be secretive about it and not tell you about it. That to me is fascinating.
Yeah, and it was impossible to ignore, It was very clear to me that what I was doing was not only was it unhealthy, but it was hurting me, mm-hmm. I just knew something had to change, but I didn't know what, and I didn't know how, Thank God I had the willingness, and I made the decision to I think first I tried I tried a recovery group. So I went to like an open meeting, and that didn't stick. But I said, you know what? Let me try therapy. And
you had never been in therapy up till that point?
I had actually been in therapy when I was a young boy. I was like elementary school age, and I was dealing with, it was when I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. They brought me to like a childhood therapist, and so I knew I had experienced it in the past, so I wasn't necessarily afraid to try it. I was afraid to make changes in my life, but I wasn't afraid to, I guess, take the leap and give it a try. I think one of the most important things about therapy for me was my showing myself that I was willing to show up for myself, right? Like I was showing myself that like I cared enough to show up every week. Even the act of, you say, driving to therapy was enough to show myself like, all right, I want to make changes.
So was that something that you recognized while you were doing it? Was there like an almost an awareness that, oh, in real time, I'm showing up for myself in a way that I never have before?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think many people have that kind of awareness, and I don't know what it was. It just was a feeling. It's just like, something doesn't feel right, and I can continue to do it and continue to lie to myself, or I could just like start looking at it, So yeah, and I mean, for many years I was in therapy and still doing the same exact stuff. Knowing that I had to put the drink down, I had to put the drug down, but not, my therapist saying like, maybe you should give it up. Maybe you should try and stop. And
had it calmed down at all while you were in therapy, or was it pretty much exactly the same?
I would have periods, right? Like I feel like I was having like 30 days here, 90 days here, and then just full blown back into it, Actually, I've described it this way before, and it really hits home for me, makes sense for me. Is like I would get these 30-day, 60-day periods of sober and abstinent and just alone and spiritual and praying and maybe going to church. And then it would feel, at a certain point, it would feel like this wet blanket kind of like weighing me down. This like sober, wet blanket that just feels really heavy and too hard for me to hold. And then I'd get a case of the fuck-its and I'd go out for a night drinking. And the second I'd have my first beer, it would feel like that wet blanket fell right off me, And I was like, oh, fuck, finally.
Right.
Like I could just have fun.
Right.
Because at that age, recovery just felt like something I could do down the line. Recovery felt like something I was too young to do. There was still so much I had to experience, or I could experience, which I know now is just an excuse, because I can be old trying to do this recovery process and say, well, I'm too old and I'm stuck in my ways, So, yeah, and that went on for years, years.
The therapy and the continuous behavior.
Yeah. Hot and cold, I have a tattoo on the back of my neck that says balance. And I remember when I first came into recovery, I would pray for balance, meaning I was just so tired of the extremes back and forth. Full on recovery and like sober from everything, and then months of acting out, getting high, getting drunk. I feel like that's what I was trying to do in therapy all along. I was just trying to get there somewhere in the middle. And I think this is important because this is a part of my story. I got sober right after I bought my second home. I was 26 years old, 27 years old. And like everything on the outside looked great. It appeared I had everything together. I was helping take care of some family members. Financially, I was good. Vocationally, I was good. I was, taking tests, moving up in my field. And so yeah, it all looked great, but something inside just wasn't. There was this pit inside that I was still trying to fill with things outside of me. Like forget all the other stuff. If I stop drinking, if I stop getting high, if I stop acting out in behavior that was, just to make myself feel better about myself, would I be a better person? And the easy answer is yes.
Pretty
So-
simple way of looking at it.
Yeah. So even those 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, I felt like a better version of myself. So I had this sample size of like, all right, this stuff works.
Right.
Just how can I do it long term?
So let's continue. So now you're in therapy, you're having these obvious realizations, you have this point of reference where you're either A, behaving like the version of yourself that it seems like at this point you're clear you would like to be, but then at a certain point, the weight of the blanket becomes too heavy and you go back to this other way of behaving that kind of feels like you feel relief, which I completely relate and understand. I mean, I remember when I used to get off work and me and some of my colleagues would go to happy hour, around 5:36, and we'd go to the bar and get a drink. And I remember I would have that, gin and tonic or Johnny Black on the rocks or whatever it was that I was drinking at that point. And I remember that first sip when I would get off of work, and it would just feel like all of my muscles, it would literally trickle down my body, and it would be like, oh, now I can chill. Now I can chill. So I think for a lot of people who are struggling with putting down certain things, it's hard to imagine not having that relief, that instant push the button and get that relief from whatever it is that you're experiencing in that moment that you don't want to feel. So you're how old at this point? Let's say you've been in therapy for a few years. You're still having these experiences. You're still living this life. You're now, what?
28, 29.
28, 29. Then what?
I also remember being in therapy. I was seeing him for about maybe going on 4 years now of the same behavior, like I said, with those periods of time. But like being in therapy, telling on myself over and over. And I remember like asking him like, why can't I stop this behavior? Like I'm here talking about this stuff every day, every week. I'm showing up every week. Why can't I stop? And he had recommended multiple times about a recovery group. It just wasn't for me in my mind. It wasn't for me. I could do this on my own. I was one of those guys that wanted the drugs available and I wanted to be able to say no to them, right? Without having to take it out of my life to say no to it, So I wanted it to be like at arm's length, but I wanted to be the guy who could be like, nah, I'm good.
I'm good.
But I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
Why do you think that was? Why was that important to you for that to be able to be something that you identified yourself as being like, I'm the kind of guy that can have it right here, but choose not to do it?
Maybe because I didn't like labels. I still don't really like labels, right? But maybe because I didn't want to be labeled as an addict. I didn't want to be labeled as powerless.
As having a problem.
Right. Yeah.
So your way of avoiding the label of any of those things was like, as soon as I walk into that room, I really have no choice but to acknowledge on a certain level that there is a problem, that I have a problem.
100%.
And you just didn't want that.
Yeah, and let's also add that my dad had been in recovery for 30, 40 years, and maybe there's a part of me that didn't want to admit that I was like my dad in that sense. Like, no, I'm different. I'm not an addict.
That's a you thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I didn't inherit that problem.
Right.
And in reality, maybe I didn't inherit the problem, but I had the same problem. That's the honest truth. And then I gave it a try. I gave recovery a try for real this time. But my for real was still my own way, right? Like I was just going to meetings. I was maybe staying a little after meetings and talking to guys, but I wasn't willing to do what they were asking me to do in the program. I wanted to do it my way. And it continued maybe a little bit. Maybe the periods of recovery were a little longer.
And what did you think that the program or the recovery group was asking you? Because were they really asking you to do anything?
Well, so maybe not asking us someone to do it, but wanting you to maybe take some steps. If you really wanted to reap the benefits of the program, then you would have to take some steps in the program. That your chances of recovering were much higher. And maybe just if we're looking at the wording in our program, it says that our will is not the way, right? That is God's will is the way. Allowing somebody else to help us with our problem, because we are the reason we got into this situation, into this mess.
There might be someone listening to us talking right now that is on the fence about something, right? They also are, and mind you, and I'll say this right to the camera, this is not a podcast that's like, go to a recovery group. That's not the message here. If you decide to, that's on you. What we're simply talking about are our shifts, and the shifts that played a role in our lives that got us to a place where we now are in a way better spot, and how the shifts keep happening. So what I'm curious about for you is, can you think of one particular example of something that you felt like the recovery group was suggesting or offering as a possibility of something that might help you to get the goal of becoming the version of yourself that you really want to be, that you were not willing to do? You're like, I'll do these things, but don't touch that.
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Yeah. So when I actually got sober, was December of 2019.
Okay.
The two decisions that I made was to go away. I went away for a retreat, and to get a mentor. Those were the suggestions. And those are two things that I had been avoiding. And most importantly was get a mentor. Allow someone else to guide me through this process, because I couldn't get myself through it. So I think those are the two major decisions I made that ultimately changed my life. That ultimately brought me to sit in this chair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was there something, though, that you weren't willing to do? Because you had said you were still doing it your way. So I'm curious as to what at that time, because I know eventually you know, and we're going to get to that part where you kind of eventually were like, all right, I'm all in.
Yeah.
But what in the beginning were you still hanging on to that you realized now you needed to let go of?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was just a combination of all of the things.
Okay.
Like I said, I think the periods of recovery were a little bit longer, and the periods of addiction were a little bit shorter, and it was kind of trending in that direction.
Got it.
But ultimately,
so you were still kind of, even though you were in the recovery group, there was still it wasn't linear. It wasn't like you got into the recovery group and it was like, all right, now it's just smooth sailing. There were periods of time where you would go back to the old addictive behaviors, but the periods of the sobriety periods, the abstinence periods were now just longer. Yeah. Okay.
But even though those periods of addiction were shorter, they were more painful. Yeah. They were much more painful.
Talk about that. Yeah. Why?
Because there was just so much awareness, My dad likes to say that there's a Buddhist definition of enlightenment, and it's this inability to go back, right? And it's like the alcoholic who has piss in his beer. You've heard that saying before. It's like you can't drink the beer and have it taste the way that it used to taste anymore.
Right.
You can't. It's just that the behavior becomes more painful. It just simply becomes more painful. It becomes more unbearable for your soul, right? I just knew that, if I continued down that road, it was just going to continue to break me down, deteriorate my soul, deteriorate my health. And I just really wanted to do better and be better. So every time I was going back to that behavior, it was kind of like I was giving up on myself.
Which must have been painful.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You were talking about that whiskey, I remember one of the last times I drank, we were at a meeting in in the city, and I live on Long Island. And I left the meeting. I told a bunch of guys at the meeting that I was thinking about drinking, that I was thinking about acting out, and that I got offered a ride home, or at least to the train station, and I denied it. Got on the train, came down, got off the train, walked into a bar, went straight for a glass of tequila because to drink a beer would have been too slow, and then I would have had regret doing it. So I asked for a shot of tequila and a beer. And that was one of the last times I ever drank. Yeah, I remember that. It's just this complete powerlessness. And it hurt me too much to drink, so I had to do it quick. You know, it hurt me too much to think about the idea of me going to a meeting and then right into a bar, you know, and it wasn't long after that that I made those two major decisions that we spoke about. Might have been like 2 weeks later.
After that you decided, I'm going to go on this retreat.
Yep.
That was geared towards sobriety.
Yep.
And I'm going to get a mentor.
Exactly.
Yep. And then what?
Whew. What does our mentor say? Like, every part of recovery feels like the hardest part of recovery. And then probably the hardest 90 days of my life, the hardest 120 days of my life, hardest 6 months of my life.
So what, at that point, if you're willing to talk about it, were you actively putting down?
Yeah, so, I mean, I gave up all forms of drugs, all forms of alcohol. I entered into complete abstinence from any women, any women that I've dated, any dating apps. I wound up having to go through, with the recommendations of my mentor, wound up going through my phone, changing deleting all numbers, blocking all numbers of people from my past, really safeguarding myself at that time, trying not to allow anybody else to interfere in my recovery. You know, this idea of like old people, places, and things, I really had to get rid of them. And then even after that, 3 months into my recovery, I decided with my mentor that I was going to change my phone number, which was once again another action step that I took that showed myself how serious I was about this recovery. You know, deleting all social medias, all that stuff. You know, it all played a major role in the shift.
I think I remember specifically the call that me and you and our mentor were on when he suggested to you changing your number altogether.
Yeah.
And I feel like I remember being like, whoa, that's a big, like, there's something about your phone number, you know, especially you've been having it for a long time. I've had my number for, I think I've had the same phone number for 23 years. Or something like that, you know? And the idea of changing it feels like, no, you can't take that away from me. It's my phone number. You know, it almost feels attached to my identity in a way. Did you feel that? Like when he suggested changing your phone number, what did that feel like to you?
I don't know if that was the first time he recommended it.
Right.
But I do know he recommended it several times. And every time I was just like, yeah, nah.
Right.
You don't know, bro.
Right.
You don't understand. Like, that's not happening. Until once again, I realized, like, I need to listen to my mentor because he knows better than I know right now.
Right.
Like, I can't rely on my feelings, how I feel, or what I think I am capable of doing, because I just kept showing myself I wasn't capable of doing it.
Well, also, your drugs were just right there.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? It was literally a pharmacy of drugs just in your contact section.
Yep. And, you know, we've spoken about this before. Like, one of my biggest struggles was saying no.
Saying no to
anything if it was presented to me, you know, relationships, partying, any of that stuff. So changing my number was like a game changer, you know? And, yeah, it was just another one of those examples for myself. Like, yo, I'm serious about this. And, and I've recommended that to like 24 people. I don't think anybody's ever changed their number.
I've never changed mine.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I've deleted many numbers and changed names to, our mentor has famously recommended, I think to you too, that I change a name. There was one name he wanted me to change from the person's name to Pain.
Yep.
So that anytime that I went to that number, if I thought about, calling that person or reaching out to that person, I'm looking at the name Pain, knowing that that is what I am unblocking and that is what I am reaching out to.
I had the same exact contact with a different number.
Right. You said it was the hardest 60 days, 90 days, 120 days.
Yeah.
So in that period of time, you're now putting down sex,
Yep.
dating, flirting, masturbation.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
At least that's what was being recommended.
Yeah.
Drinking and drugs, obviously.
Yeah.
And now walk me through that first extended period of time. What was that like? What was the thing that was the biggest struggle? What did it feel like in your body, and what were those moments like where you started to maybe have those moments feeling like, I can't do this, this is too much, and how did you get through those?
I mean, it was painful. It was not easy. It felt like because you took it away, I needed it that much more. That's what it felt like. It felt like I had more of a pull to all of those things than I had ever had before in my life. But it felt like I, for the first time in my life, had a whole lot more to lose. That I had invested time and energy into myself that I had never done before. So
the stakes were higher.
Stakes were higher.
Okay.
Yeah.
So with the stakes being higher, it's now like you had gotten a taste of, this is how I show up for myself when I'm operating at my best.
Yeah.
When I'm moving through this world as the Dane that I want to be, I show up for me. I take care of me. I do these things. So then my guess is that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you were to go and think about doing one of these other old behaviors, you'd be like, nah, I've already felt what taking care of me and showing up for me looks like, and I know that is not it.
Yeah, no, that you're spot on. And when you were speaking, it made me think of something that I wanted to say and I forgot. Is that when I was in therapy, I remember having this conversation with my therapist. Like, I know I'm a good person. Like I could sense that I have a good heart, that I'm a good person, and that I care about people. But the behavior says opposite. And it was like a hunt or like a search for this version of me that I knew was better. And then my therapist would ask me at the time, like, who do you want to be? What do you want to be? And I remember vividly speaking to him and saying, I want to be a father, and I want to be a husband, and I want to do those things right, and I want to do those things good, and so that was another thing that I had to lose, because I felt like every time I took a step in that direction to better myself, that I was then getting closer to this version of me that I wanted to be, and
closer to this family that you wanted to have.
100%.
Right.
Yeah, and it was hard, man. It was like, and I've heard you say this before, will this next action or this next step get me closer to the version of myself that I want to be? Will it get me closer to God? Or will it take me further from the person I want to be, or further from God? When I simplified it like that, it made it a lot easier for me. It really did. It made me realize, like, all right, I'm on this path. Let's stay on this path.
When you simplified it, making it that, okay, here's this desire or this impulse or this thing that suggests, asking for this thing. It wants me to do this thing.
Yeah.
Does this bring me closer to my best self, or closer to God, or one and the same, right? Yep. Does it bring me closer to that, or does it not? And it started to become very clear to you that if the action was, for example, let's just use taking a shot of tequila. We'll just use that as an example. And that shot of tequila could be someone's, masturbation to porn, someone's having sex with a prostitute, someone's heroin, someone's meth, someone's bucket of fried chicken, whatever it could be, someone's addicted to social media, anything that you're picking up, right? Or you're having an impulse and like an itch to pick up. does me making the choice to go for that thing in this moment bring me closer to the version of myself or to God? Let's just stick with the version of ourself right now.
Yeah.
The version of myself that I want to be, that I see myself as, and that I want to actually come to fruition, or does it not? And that was what you were using to simplify your decision-making process.
Yeah, absolutely. Every step of the way felt like I could fall. Every step of the way. It's like I had to wake up every single morning and make a decision to continue on this path. Every single morning. I didn't wake up, especially in the beginning, I didn't wake up any morning and say, all right, here's going to be an easy day. I assumed it was going to be difficult. I assumed I was going to struggle. So like our mentor says, like I was in the process of waging war on the disease of addiction. Doing everything in my power, everything in my will to put myself in a position to succeed. And a lot of that for me was, you hear it a lot. Like I was journaling a lot. I was praying a lot. I was, in prayer. I was meditating a lot. I was taking care of my body. I was working out a lot. I was probably in the best shape I'd ever been in my life. I was training for races, runs and triathlons.
How did those become tools, and why did they become so vital in your process of your shift?
First of all, I knew that in this process, I was rewiring my brain. I knew that I was changing the neural pathways in my brain. The way that I did that was by being met with the same situations or scenarios that I was met with prior to recovery, and then taking a different route. So maybe a lot of the times in the past, I would have a dream about an ex, and then I would wake up and I would text them. Like it was just an impulse, like, oh, well, that's God's way of telling me that I should reach out to her.
Right. There was no option in your mind. It wasn't like, well, I can do this or I cannot do this. You woke up, had the dream, and it was one choice, which was reach out to this person.
That neural pathway was deep.
Deep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I had traveled that road many, many times before. So now fast forward, when I was in recovery, I had so many dreams about so many things and so many people that would have pulled me back into those old behaviors. But what I was doing instead was journaling, dropping to my knees in the morning and praying, now looking at my phone for an hour. Like those were all little tools that, if simplified, right, were bringing me closer to God, bringing me closer to the version of myself that I knew I wanted to be, that I knew I was capable of being. I just hadn't been there yet, right? And then
But now you were starting to get a taste of, and starting to get more clarity as to what that path to the version of yourself that you want to be is actually could potentially look like.
And because I was doing it, and I was doing it more often, it was getting easier.
Right.
So those things were getting a little bit easier, Making those decisions for myself were getting a little bit easier. Same thing with like fitness. Fitness did the same thing for me. I always took care of myself, but it was like I had created a mountain for me to climb, so that the other stuff was a little less important, so that my focus was on something else, But they also did that for me as well. They also distracted me from the old ways. They also helped me relieve maybe stress or pent up anxiety or whatever. So
you mean all the physical working out?
Yes, yes. And it also helped me sleep. Because sleep was, getting like a routine of sleep was really important for me early on in recovery too. That like going to bed at 9 o'clock, waking up at 6. I got 3 more hours in the morning and 3 less hours at night. And I was able to optimize those hours in a sober way, because nothing good ever happened for me between 9 p.m. and midnight or after midnight. Nothing good.
Right.
Yeah, I was just trying to keep myself guarded. And all of those things really helped me with that, Yeah. And I had read a ton of spiritual and recovery books, but one of the books that I read early on in recovery that was recommended to me was The Power of Habit. And that book took me out of this like, put your faith in God because he can change you, which I believe God is, and Jesus is like everything to me. I would have nothing without them. But it opened my mind to say that like, we have the ability to rewire our own brains through consistent habits. You know, small habit changes over a long period of time can form a major tectonic shift in our lives somewhere down the line. I realized that, you know, I didn't have to just put this in God's hands. Like, God is the gift, but if I'm not taking action, then that gift is being wasted. You know, that really took me into a place of like active recovery, like really stepping into my recovery and saying like, all right, it's no longer I'm not trying to control it with my will, but I'm taking advantage of every opportunity that God is presenting to me and not letting any of it waste.
Now, what would you say, because some of our listeners may be atheists, right? And I do genuinely believe that whether you do believe in God or you don't, these stories and these shifts are available to you, just might look a little different, or you might hear it a little different. One might experience as depression may be enough of a calling for them to start making some changes in their life. And if you don't, for example, have any interest in God or want to believe in God, if you're hearing us talk about God or you hear God mentioned and you choose that is going to be a reason that you tune out, or all of a sudden don't take anything from this to apply to your own journey, my invitation to you would be to ask yourself why that is. Because if there's a bunch of things that are resonating for you, but the God part of it is not, we have a saying which is take what you like and leave the rest. My hope is that someone might listen to this and be like, I'm not alone. There are people that are out there that have gone through stuff, that have made changes in their lives, and they're actually willing to talk about it for the world to see. They're willing, which makes, I'm hoping, some individual, even if it's one person, just be able to feel less alone and maybe willing to take whatever their first step is, whether they believe in God or not. And their first step might simply be to go hop on some website or go into a bookstore and buy a journal and say, you know what, now first thing when I get up in the morning, rather than grab my phone, I'm going to write one paragraph or one page or 2 pages or whatever, just about where my head is at right now, about what I'm thinking about. I'm going to get it on a page and I'm just going to look at it. And even if I don't do it every day, I'm going to once a week, twice a week, whatever. I'm going to start a shift. I'm going to start something that's going to start to potentially be that boat that makes that 1 millimeter shift with the faith. And I don't mean faith in a higher power, faith in God, just with the faith in this process, that somehow this process over time is going to get me somewhere different than the journey that I am currently on. Just wanted to make that little side.
Yeah, and that's why that book was so helpful for me as well. Because that book doesn't talk anything about God. You don't need God to take steps to better yourself, but I did. And I've shared so many stories with you about my progression in my recoveries, like that I believed in this higher power. I didn't label it God. I didn't label it Jesus or anything like that. And it was really, it was like this metaphor of like climbing, right? Mm-hmm. So I think about like me on my bike, climbing a hill and like working hard to get up that hill. And I would think about like, all right, HP's at the top. Higher powers at the top. And then if you take that into any aspect of your life, if you're working towards something, if you're metaphorically climbing a hill and God is at the top of it, if you're pushing forward, you're getting closer to him. But if you're staying still, you're falling back. And then slowly but surely, my belief in God turned into a kind of like a pull towards religion, the religion that I grew up in. And
it brought you back.
Brought me back, exactly. It wasn't like a rebirth. It was like a rebirth. It was like a returning to Christ for me.
But almost in a way on your terms.
Yes.
As opposed to what you had just been taught.
Yes.
Or seen as a kid.
Yeah, because I really don't think it's ever a good thing to like force religion or God on anyone. I truly believe that you need to find that yourself.
Yep.
And for me, it was perfect. You know, it was exactly what I needed and when I needed it. And it wasn't too much. It wasn't too little. It was just right, man. And my belief in God, I don't know if I'd call myself religious, but my relationship with God is stronger than it's ever been in my life. You know, my relationship with Christ, Jesus Christ, is stronger than it's ever been in my life. So it doesn't have to be everybody's story, but it is mine.
We were talking about these tools that you were using, right? Journaling and prayer, and you've talked about prayer a lot and how that helped. How would you say the journaling helped?
It was just another one of those action steps that I just continued to show up for myself and like show myself that I cared enough to show up for myself. And it's also a great tool to go back and read your journals.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, to see what you were writing when you first got sober. When you're a year down the line and you see what you were writing, you know, your first day, second day in recovery, it's like clear as day how different things are.
Yep. Like you think you have problems and you're complaining about something in your journal, and then you look at something from a year prior and you're like, oh, my problems are way smaller.
Yes.
Like, everything it's, you know, and, you know, I had a similar moment when you were talking about these moments that you had in your life that all of a sudden you would see yourself driving to therapy, or you would take these action steps that in the moment you were looking at, oh, I'm showing up for myself in this new way. I remember early 2021, you know, I started, my sobriety journey began in the beginning of 2019. I think it was actually late 2020. And I was sitting in my apartment in Brooklyn, and I was wearing this really soft, fuzzy robe that my mom had given me. And I was in my chair. I was living in a studio apartment at the time in Prospect Lefferts Gardens in Brooklyn. And I was doing my morning routine. And I had just finished meditating. And I was journaling. And I just started crying in the middle of journaling. And I'm getting emotional right now just thinking about it, because I remember in that moment being like, wow, I love myself. And it was the first time ever in my life that thought, in like explicitly in those words, came into me. I love myself. And I was overwhelmed with emotion. Just, I'm sitting here in this comfortable robe in this chair, writing down these things that are on my mind. What if I didn't love myself? I wouldn't be doing this. Wouldn't be how I would be treating myself. So what you're saying is I relate to that.
Yeah.
So you had the journaling, you had the meditation, you had the prayer. Let's talk about meditation for a second. How did you, had you meditated at all before you had started to get sober?
I had tried meditation a lot. I'd given it a good try a few times.
And how did your meditation change you or help you when you began your sobriety journey?
I did it a lot. I don't necessarily know if it was like one of the most profound things for my recovery.
Okay.
It definitely took me out of my head. You know, I didn't do it very well, but I also heard early on that, like, you know, even if you could silence your brain for just a few seconds, then you're doing it, you know? So I would try not to be hard on myself. I definitely have a very active brain, you know? Like I have a very hard time sitting still, but it never stopped me. I would try, you know? I would give it a good effort. And it was recommended to me. So it was just another thing that I was doing because everything that I was doing prior wasn't working. So let me just give it a shot, you know? And I had a few profound experiences with meditation.
One of the things that meditation really helped me with was sitting with the discomfort.
Oh, yeah.
Just the simplicity of, okay, if the discomfort is the thing that then causes me to go and act out, reach for something, whatever that thing may be, because I'm trying to get out of this feeling. When I would wake up in the morning, and every single morning, what began as 2 minutes Then over time became 5. Then 5 became 15, 10 and 15, 20, you know, to the point where I was, okay, now meditating. There would be so many moments during those 20 minutes where I wanted to stop. You know, just an itch that came up of like, oh, fuck this or whatever, you know? And it would be like, if I can just feel that, breathe right into the feeling, drop on the exhale, and just keep doing that, I'm practicing the art, the skill of sitting with a feeling. So then that became something that when, you know, I'm walking down the street and some smoking hot girl and, you know, spandex walks past me and I want to go run back and try to get her phone number, and the feeling of trying to pull myself away from doing it, saying, Ben, this is not the behavior that you actually want to be engaging in, but there's this craziness happening inside that wants to go do it so bad. I truly believe that my experience with meditation helped me to sort of be able to just ease enough, just enough in that moment to make the decision to keep walking.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, sitting with yourself, especially in those moments.
Let's talk about, because I know something that's been really, really big for you has been your training. You've done half Ironman. You did a half Ironman.
Yeah,
which
I did
is
a half Ironman.
Fucking insane. Tell me
It's
again
not
what
a full
a half
Ironman.
What's that?
It's not a full Ironman.
Well, tell me again what a half Ironman is.
It's a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike ride, and a half marathon.
So
13.1 miles.
13.1 miles, and it goes in that order.
Yeah, swim, ride, run.
So you swim 1.2 miles. You get out of the, what is it, a lake?
I swam at Jones Beach, so it was like in the Sound.
Okay.
Yeah.
You come out, and then what? You just
Suit up, get right on your bike.
get right on your bike.
Yep.
Ride.
Get on the ride. Get off your
56
bike.
miles.
56 miles, and then put your shoes on and run.
13 point.
Yep.
Right. And you did that, and how long did it take you to do it?
It's not great time. My swim and my ride felt really good, but my run I think was like I think I wound up finishing like just at 6 hours.
Still, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing that up because that became something for you to focus on.
Yeah.
In this sobriety experience, you all of a sudden had, you know, it reminds me of, and I know the Ironman thing wasn't your job per se, but one of our fellows has a saying that he loves to say, which is, I couldn't have an occupation until I dealt with my pre-occupation, right? Which was like, we put so much time and effort and thought and energy into getting these addictive needs met that all of a sudden when they're gone after a while and we start to kind of get used to the sobriety process a little bit more, we have a lot more bandwidth. We now have this energy that was being, you know, all funneled into this one area before that now is within us. Where are we going to put it? And something that our mentor has always said to us is give yourself a mountain to climb so that you have something to kind of channel that energy into that you can focus on, because then it makes it even easier to avoid the unwanted, addictive, acting out behaviors, because it's very clear that those things are not going to help you to get towards this thing, whether that thing would be to write a novel, start a podcast, do a half Ironman, whatever. So was that your experience? Tell me about your experience and what made you ultimately decide to do it and how your training helped you on your journey.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, because I feel like without a mountain to climb, you have this like vacuum of a hole inside of you that will ultimately pull whatever it wants in if you're not giving it something, you know? And it was just replacing all of that old shit with something better for me, something good for me. And
And something that's exciting
and fun. And I also love being able to reap the benefits of the work that I put in. I love watching myself get healthier, watching myself get stronger, watching myself get faster. Like I love that whole process. And then completing that is like one of the most accomplished feelings I've ever had in my life, you know, because I saw how much time and energy I put into it. And then I saw that, like, I'm capable of doing this stuff. I wanted to do a little bit better. I will do better. It's not my last race, but yeah, 100%. Yeah, I had to fill my time with that stuff. Otherwise, the other stuff would just find its way back in.
I think one of the things about people who get addicted to stuff, there's a certain amount of excitement, right? It's exciting to go get fucked up on tequila in a club and do bumps of cocaine in the bathroom and then pick up a girl on the dance floor and then hop in your car fucked up and take her back to your place and have sex. That's like there's an excitement about
and an intensity
and an intensity, right? An intensity about that. So when I got excited just now just talking about it.
Me too.
Right? But when you're now like made a decision that I am no longer ever going to engage in that again, right? Where I think a lot of people end up becoming miserable sober fucks. You know what I mean? They're sober, but they're fucking miserable because all they did was focus on removing that. That's it. It's like, okay, I took it away. I'm no longer doing the blow and the drinking and the casual sex, and now my life's going to be good. Well, what are you replacing it with? Because I know for me, it wasn't until I found healthy things that I could sink my teeth into and get excited about, that I needed a certain level of intensity. I just needed a different type of intensity. I needed to get my intensity and my drama and my excitement from a completely different, beautiful, healthy source, right? So now I've started my podcast. In May. I wrote a short film that's all about this journey of sobriety, and I'm starring in it. I'm co-directing it. I've raised the money, to make it. It's like I'm 2 songs into my very first album, that's also once again about this process and journey and sobriety. And it's like, if I don't have these things that I get excited, I mean, when I'm in the studio making music, or when sitting here with you right now, or coming up with the ideas for my podcast, they ignite me. I need that ignition. I need it, because if not, it's going to always feel like sobriety is boring and acting out is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Now you've been doing all these things. You're excited about these journeys, these physical training and the half Ironman and the marathon. You ran the marathon too, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah.
And how long did you do the marathon in?
Well, it was a half marathon. No, I did the Brooklyn half marathon. I didn't do a marathon, full marathon. And then I ran the Long Island Marathon, like maybe I think it was last summer. I think I was like 155
in the half marathon.
On the half marathon, yeah.
But the Long Island Marathon was
155. That was the Long Island. The Brooklyn I did like 158. So I beat my time a little bit. 155. It's all right.
To me, it's amazing. Yeah. I wouldn't come anywhere near that.
Yeah, you could if you trained.
If I trained, yes. Yeah. Let's go back a little bit to the time where the things that are currently in your life began, because I just think this. I mean, when I think about people that have had a shift, I mean, it was like, you're one of the first people I thought of. I was like, talk about someone who I've witnessed a shift and repeated shift after shift after shift. It's Dane. So let's talk about, you had all this period of sobriety, you had all these periods of abstinence, and then you got to a point with your mentor where you and your mentor decided, okay, it's time to start dating.
Yeah, so after about like 9 months, I was kind of, we made the decision that I was going to enter back into the dating world. And I had reached out to my ex that I was previously with before I got sober. And we had entered back into another relationship. There had been a lot of struggles between her and I prior to getting sober. And I thought that because I had done the work, that things were going to change and that we would then work. Without spending too much time on it, we didn't work. But at the end of it all, her and I were able to separate with love and kindness towards one another. There wasn't any anger. There wasn't any, blaming or anything like that. It was just like, you know what? Maybe the most loving thing we can do is leave this relationship and leave it behind us, you know? And I had then entered into like another small period of just being alone. I think, it was important for me not to just kind of jump back into it with someone else. And then it was like a slow go, I was like what they call sober dating for a while.
So just for our listeners that have never been in recovery, just because I think sober dating can sound, we might know what that means, but not everybody else does. In a way, your sober dating process, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was just you figuring out before you went back out there, what are the things that are important to me in a partner? What are the ways that I am going to create some boundaries for myself to kind of maybe how many dates before a first kiss or how many dates before we're having sex? Ways to try your best with the guidance of your mentor to create some sort of structure so that you weren't just running around falling back into old ways of doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he had kind of broken it down for me like this is an interview process. Like these women are filling out applications, in a certain way. Like, you really want to get to know this person before you get involved with them in any way, physically, any way, like really emotionally or anything like that.
Right. And hopefully they're doing their own version of that in a way as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So, definitely coming up with like deal breakers for myself, coming up with, which is like, if this person has this trait, does this thing that I have as written down as a deal breaker or that I've agreed with my mentor is a deal breaker, that I have to then walk away from the relationship.
Can you remember a particular deal breaker that you had written down at that point that you would have recognized would have been problematic for you?
I think a deal breaker for me was someone who didn't believe in God. That was a deal breaker for me.
Okay.
So for me, it was somebody that had some form of a relationship with God. And if they didn't, then, that's fine. It's fine that you don't have a relationship with God, but I just don't think that that's something that I want in my life. I think another deal breaker was someone who, you don't necessarily find this out by asking someone, but someone who had a drinking or drug problem. So if I went on a date, I wouldn't ask them if they had a drinking problem. I'd let them order their drinks, and if they got drunk on the first date with me, then it was just a deal breaker for me. Again, that's not terrible because I'm sure there's a lot of people that get drunk on first dates. But for me, it was a deal breaker. Someone who had kids was a deal breaker for me.
You wanted to date someone with no children.
Yeah, I wanted to start my own life with someone. And then also on the other side of that, someone who didn't want kids was a deal breaker for me.
Right.
Because that was what we spoke about earlier. That was like part of the identity that I was working towards. It's part of the version of me that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a father. Whereas in the past, if someone told me they didn't want kids, I would, we were just talking about this. I would bend who I was.
Right.
Because maybe I could convince her, or maybe it wasn't that important, or maybe she doesn't really know, Whereas like
or
now,
maybe you just thought she was hot enough.
Yeah.
You were just like, I just want to sleep with this woman so bad that I'll be willing to go with whatever she's saying, and just so that I can have the opportunity to have sex with her.
Which is also why there would be a date that sex would be allowed. Because if I had already had sex with her and then she told me that those were things that she wanted or didn't want, then I'd probably be more likely to be like, all right, fine. The sex is great. I'm going to stick around.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you were creating a buffer, right? Or I don't know if the buffer is the right word, but you were creating a system that said, okay, I'm not going to have sex for X amount of dates, whether you stuck to it perfectly or not. But
it was 8. I think it was 8 dates.
Okay, so you're not going to have sex for 8 dates, right? If you go 8 dates with someone without having sex, you are going to get to know a shit ton about that person. And I know me, in my history, and I know you and I relate to this, when I've had sex, if I've had sex with someone and the sex was great, and like they were the things I liked, and whatever, and we had that kind of that sexual chemistry, I might end up having sex, hanging out with that person for 7, 8, 9 months. You know what I mean? Regardless of if we were compatible in any other way, just because of how addictive and how much of a high I got from the sex. So recognizing that was a potential pitfall for you, right? And I created the same sober dating plan for myself because I recognized it was a pitfall for me. What you're saying is that if you create that period of time where you are put it down on paper, I am going to wait, you'll gather enough information that might make you say, this is not working out, I need to walk away. And then you're walking away, and it's a lot easier if you haven't gotten physical with them yet. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And even then, sometimes it wasn't easy because you put all this work in, you want the payoff, right?
Right.
Like now you've been on a date with this person 5 or 6 times, you're super attracted to them, but they're telling you things that don't align with what you want. And then being like, all right, now I got to give this up, and it's challenging. It's not easy. Our mentor used to say like sober dating is like the weirdest thing ever, and especially in the world that we live in, like no one expects you to date like this.
Absolutely not.
It's actually like the more intense you are on the first date, the more chemistry, the better.
Right.
A lot of times. And that's how it was for me,
Right.
Like I remember.
Which is why we have a saying, chemistry versus compatibility.
Oh, 100%.
Not the same thing.
Yeah. And intimacy and intensity. Right. Same thing. It's like intimacy is not intensity. And just because you're like oversharing, a friend of ours told me once, like, Dane, there's such thing as oversharing. And, it's all right to tell somebody that they're oversharing on a date, and like in my mind, it's like, oh, well, that's great. If they're sharing all that stuff with me, that means they trust me. And like, and
or catch yourself and recognize, I feel like I'm oversharing right now.
Yeah, which I definitely struggled with for sure. So yeah, almost like sober dating at times felt boring. Just like we were talking about before, like recovery can be really fucking boring at times. It can feel really fucking boring at times. It could feel like that wet blanket that's kind of just holding you down and not letting you kind of like release and escape and just be free of all this work that we have to put in. But it's like, it's like anything else, like sacrifice. The definition of sacrifice is like giving up something right now that we want so that we can have something greater in the future. Absolutely. And that's what sober dating is. It's like, yeah, I really want to hook up with this girl, but is it going to get me closer to the version of me that I'm working to be?
Right.
And no is usually the answer.
Right.
It's no. And then for me with sober dating, because I did it imperfectly, like sometimes I would fall and I would engage with somebody even though I knew that we weren't necessarily compatible for the long term. But instead of looking at it as like a failure, I looked at it as like a step back and an opportunity for me to learn from the experience.
Right. And re-engage.
Yeah. And I'd like to say this, like, just because I got sober does not mean I did all this perfect. I did this super imperfect. I just kept showing up for myself.
Right.
Over and over. I kept showing up for myself.
Right.
And having friends like you and our mentor in my life to constantly call myself out and tell on myself was like so important, because anytime I kept myself in the dark, anytime I kept this stuff a secret, it ate at me and it made it much easier for me to continue to do the same behavior.
Right.
Right.
Because it's why we talk about shame being one of the number one reasons why people continue to act out, is because we're looking for a fix to not feel so bad. So we hold on to the secret of, oh, I just did this thing that I don't feel good about. Now that it's just sitting in there, it's just creating this shame because, and the more that we hold on to the secret, it's we're telling our subconscious, hey, we're not safe to share this, because somewhere deep down, it's probably because we believe that if we share it, it means that we're not good. We're not these things that maybe the people that we're going to share it with maybe think we are, and that they're going to leave me. right? I'm going to share that I had this slip, that I did this thing, that I slept with this woman prematurely. I had planned on 8 dates. I knew by the 3rd date she wasn't a woman that I wanted to be with long term. I had sex with her. I'm not going to tell anyone because my mentor in Ben might think like, oh, my recovery's not up to snuff. I'm not the man who, and it's all bullshit, right? It's completely all bullshit. And then as soon as we bring it out into the open, and the people who were afraid to say it to all of a sudden look at us and they're just like, brother, you're the man. I love you. Get back on the horse, course correct.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be perfect. Then you're actually reminded like, oh, I do have a safe place. I do have people where I can share these things with that are reminding me that I am loved just as I am, and that it's not always going to be linear, and that I can get right back on the horse, and these people are going to help me do it.
And also, if you're sharing stuff like that you're feeling ashamed of or bad about, you share it with me, it allows me to then maybe come clean about something that I was hiding because I was afraid of the judgment that would come down the line.
Right.
So it opens up this like safe place, right? We talk about it on the retreats a lot. Like, this is a safe place. Like, you could say anything, you could be anyone, whatever it is you need to do to heal, do it,
Right.
And I think, it's this idea like you helping me or me helping you in those moments where you need the help really helps me. Me being on the phone, hearing you out and giving a little bit of feedback that maybe I give you is helping me. It's reminding me of the recovery that I'm in. It's reminding me of the work that I need to do. Hearing things that you struggle with remind me of the things that I struggle with. It's a beautiful thing.
So much of my dating process before was strictly about me getting my needs met. Do you check my boxes of the things that I want, full stop, right? And what I love is that we have another guy that we both know that says, the process of getting sober, the journey is a shift from the me to the we, right? And for me, spending those several dates going out with someone and not sleeping with them not only made me realize, are you someone who can ultimately give me the things that I want in a relationship, but are you the type of person that I want to give all of these things to in a relationship as well? And it made me think to myself, by the 3rd or 4th date, if I go on a 3rd date with someone, that means I do like them, right? I might not end up falling in love with them, but there's a part of me that feels like, okay, I like this person as a person. Now because of my history in the past of definitely sleeping with women that liked me more than I liked them and hurting them, and knowing that I don't ever want to do that again, and knowing that I want to be, just as much as I want to get love, I want to give love, right? It gave me this process of asking myself, do I feel like I am going to complement this person's life? Do I feel like that I'm engaging sexually with this person and moving further into a more intimate relationship with this person is something that because I want to continue to build something collaboratively with this individual, or is it just because I want to fuck? And if it was just about me wanting to fuck time and time again, I had to be like, I got to walk away. And it was one of those kind of like you talk about that question, does it bring me closer to the better version of myself? Does it bring me closer to God? I would do that during like, what is my motive of wanting to sleep with this person? Is it because we've just naturally got to a place where we feel we both want to be intimate with each other and share and have this beautiful, loving experience? Or is it because I want to get laid? And that simplicity made it not always easy, but more clear when it was time to walk away from a relationship.
Yeah, that makes me think about Paloma, It makes me think about my wife. We met, and she's one of the, sober dating. She's one of the people that I sober dated.
One of the applicants.
Yeah. Who passed with flying stars, and like we took things very slow. She doesn't like when I say this, but it almost felt like it lacked excitement in the sense that I was being intentional, and it all started with the first date. It started with, I met her for coffee. We live right up the block from the coffee shop now, and we love going to the place. But we met for coffee, and it was just great. Just a lot of like talking and sharing similar interests about a lot of travel and about her spirituality and her belief in God. And it was like, I remember leaving, like, the only thing I can like vividly remember is I remember leaving, and I couldn't help but ask her before she left if I could see her again. But there wasn't this like, oh my God, this girl's amazing. It was just like, wow, I feel like her and I have a great connection, and I really want to see her again. So I asked, normally I would like leave, play it cool, you know, see how it goes, see if she wants to hang out with me again. I was like, I'd love to see you again, you know? And just like we were talking about before, dating intentionally, we took things very slow. At first, we started with like a date every 2 weeks. And it just so happened that like I was traveling around that time, she was traveling around that time. So it worked out nicely. It gave us these longer periods of time in between our dating to really get to know each other over text, over phone. Not a lot of texting, not a lot of phone calls, but staying in contact and kind of giving each other the space that we needed at that time. And then it went from every 2 weeks to a date every week. Then it went from a date every week to maybe like hanging out one day during the week and then on the weekends. And we like to joke around about like who initiated sex first, and it was definitely me. And she had to tell me, like, remind me that I had a boundary of no sex early on, you know? And it's the truth. I like to, you know, break her balls about it. But I had first initiated that conversation like, hey, I think it's important that we wait to get intimate because I think it can cloud our judgment on certain things. And then shortly after that, I was like kind of engaging and asking for it. And she had to remind me that we can't do it.
Right.
And one of the things that what you were talking about that reminded me of is she had just finished a year of abstinence herself. She's an emergency room nurse, and she had gone through COVID, one of the most stressful 1.5 years of her life. And she decided that she was like, I need to do some work on myself. I need to figure certain things out, find some happiness and some joy in my life. So she decided to cold turkey, just no recovery program or anything like that, just spiritually take some time for herself. And I was the first person she had gone on a date with after that.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I felt if I was just going to jump into something before I was ready, that it would be selfish. And if I wasn't ready and we jumped into it, that the damage that I could do would far outweigh the pleasure that I would get from it.
The me to the we.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. So I wanted to respect her year of abstinence and her spiritual journey without being selfish and getting what I wanted in that moment, you know? And so, you know, fast forward, you know, without going, you know, into details, you know, I'm married to my best friend. We have a beautiful little boy who's 13 months old right now. And like, you know, that's all a gift of recovery and intentional dating.
Brother, you, and as I said, I wanted to save that for the end because seeing your journey and watching your shift and now seeing you as a husband and a father, you're incredible. I mean, you are such a good husband, such a good dad. And I always tell this story when you had, when you and Paloma had your baby shower, and she was super pregnant.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like she was like 8 months pregnant at that time.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly how pregnant she was, but I remember she was very.
It was close. We were close. Yeah.
You were close.
Yeah. It was probably close to 8 months. Yeah.
I remember going to the baby shower and watching you walk around and greet all your guests and talk to everyone and talk to people's kids, and you just looked like a dad. You looked like a husband and you looked like a dad. You were just wearing this energy where all of a sudden I was like this dude that I remember the very first day I ever laid eyes on you. And you were wearing a baseball hat and you had your head in your hands, and I was looking at your tattoos all over your hands, and you had a tremendous amount of stress, and you were talking about all these things that you were engaging in. And then, you know, I don't know, 6 years later or whatever it was, watching you walk through that banquet hall at your baby shower, being like, this man has transformed. He's transformed. He is now this, as our mentor would say, this mensch, you know, this the Jewish term for just a solid dude, you know, just a real stand-up guy, you know, dancing bachata with your wife on the dance floor, walking around, engaging with the little boys and the kids, and hey, how you doing? Hey, tell your mother I said hello. And you know, I used to coach this kid's wrestling team, and I used to be like, yo, this guy's like, this is him. He looks so. I remember watching you and thinking to myself, that's Dane. Mm-hmm. Like that is the self-actualization of him moving, walking, and talking as the best version of himself. And it's inspiring. It's truly, truly inspiring. And, you know, I'm 8 months out of a relationship with a woman that it was my first long-term relationship since I'd gotten sober. Mm-hmm. Never even, in the 2 years that she and I were together, never even flirted with somebody else, which is the very first time in my life that I could even say that. The relationship was amazing. I worked my sobriety in the most beautiful way, and now it's over, and it ended in a peaceful, loving way. And I've been apart from her for 8 months, and in those 8 months, I haven't been with anybody else. I haven't no hooking up, no nothing. And of course, there's that part of me that's tugging on, you know, yo, just go get laid, go do this thing. But then there's this other part of me where I'm asking myself again, is that the version of me that I want to be? Is the part that's tugging on me to go get laid have anything to do with the we of it all? Or is that just about the me? And when I watch you, and you know, they'll be like, they'll have the, you know, those memes where they show a couple and they'll be like, goals. Like I look at you and Paloma and I think to myself, goals. I look at you and Paloma and little baby Dane, that little boy that incredibly beautiful little boy that you show me those videos of him dancing to, you know, who's he?
Bad Bunny.
Bad Bunny,
yeah.
You know? And I'm like, dude, that's what I want. So if I know that's what I want, why waste time going and activating an old version of myself? It's only going to slow me down.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, it wouldn't be a failure, right? But it'd be a step back.
Yep.
And yeah, you know, it's the version of me that I wanted to find when I was in therapy. Mm-hmm. You know, and I'm living like beyond my wildest dreams. Like truly feel like I live with my best friend. Like I feel like my wife is my best friend, and we're roommates, and we're just, you know, everything that comes to us in this world, everything that comes to me in this world is coming to us as a relationship. It's not like I'm no longer taking things on by myself. I have my best friend alongside me to help me through everything. And we're going through some really difficult times right now with my mom's health and, you know, just other family issues. And it just feels like a support system that I've never had before in my life. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she's incredible. And without her and the work that she did, the work that I did I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. You know, a relationship is two people. Mm-hmm. And I could have done all the work in the world, or she could have done all the work in the world. We always say that divine timing. We both came to each other at the perfect time. Mm-hmm. If it was probably 3 months earlier or 3 months later, it probably wouldn't have worked. Mm-hmm. If it was 3 years later or 3 years earlier, it probably wouldn't have worked. But we both were at a point in our life where we were ready, you mm-hmm. know? And, you know, you're a great reminder of it. And, other mentors and friends in this program are a great reminder of it, because I tend to forget who I was when I first came into the rooms. You know, I do remember being very intense. I do remember being very negative. I do remember always being upset and angry. Yeah, I don't feel like I'm that person anymore, like not even close.
You're not.
No, it's life has changed, and it's every single day is a blessing. You know, getting married to her was like the most amazing day of my life. And I said it in my my speech at our wedding that there's a fellow that we both know. When I was going through it and I was like wanting to reap the benefits of this work, but there was nobody there yet, and I didn't have the girlfriend, and I was really struggling with it. He said, you know, the person that you're meant to be with is currently walking on this earth. They're alive and they're breathing. So close your eyes, picture her, and pray for her. And I would always do it. I'd close my eyes. I'd picture like the silhouette of a woman, like a shadow of a woman walking down the street, beautifully, like, you know, like a nice strut. And I would just pray that God protected her. I would pray that she was having a good day, that if there was anything going on that she was struggling with, that God would guide her through it, and that she would work her way and find her way into my life. And that's exactly what I have right now. That woman that I would close my eyes and picture, it's her, without any doubt in my mind, without any question. And in the moment, you know, we were just talking about this, like when you've been on 40 dates in 3 years and you've had a lot of no's and you've had a few maybes and yeses and you were a no to them, it could feel like a failure. It could feel like you've done all this work and you're not getting the payoff. But that's not it, right? Because every refusal, every denial, or every rejection turned out to be something beautiful in my partner. I wouldn't have what I have if I didn't get the no's, you know? And we were also talking about this earlier, that rejection is God's protection. That's his way of protecting us, you know? Because sometimes we think that that person might be the right person and they're not.
Right.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I could share it with you now because I'm sure this podcast won't be coming out for a little bit. But we found out the other day that Paloma's pregnant and that we're going to be having another kid soon.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I wanted to tell you on here. So
oh my bro.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
man.
Man.
So number 2, man, another beautiful blessing. Being a father is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it's the single greatest thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm like, we're so excited, ecstatic about this next chapter.
Oh, bro, that's amazing, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations, bro.
Thank you, man.
Unbelievable.
It's beautiful. It's the gift. It's the gift of doing the work, you know?
Well, on that note, man, I just want to say how grateful I am that you came and that we did this. This is truly a dream come true, man. And my brother, I love you so much. Your story is so inspirational to me, and I have no doubt to others that are listening to this. And that concludes our episode of The Shift. Peace and love.